Hello viewers, welcome to BharatShakti.in. I am Brig Chatterji, editor BharatShakti.in. We are faced with a disaster in Uttarakhand today and the relief and rehabilitation process is on. It's supposed to have been initiated by a glacier cracking and the deluge starting. Such an occurrence, that too in the winters with temperatures much lower, is alarming. However, I would like to take you back in time and recall the history of natural disasters as we have seen in that area. In 1991, we had the Uttarkashi earthquake. In 1998, we had the Malpa landslide. 1999, we had the Chamoli earthquake. In 2012, the Himalayan flash floods. In 2013, North Indian floods, possibly the biggest disaster. In 2016, Uttarakhand forest fires, and again in 2020, the forest fires. Now, that's the intensity of disasters over a period of time in that state. I have with me today Lieutenant General Anil Chait. The general was the GOC&C Central Command when the 2013 North India floods happened. He's the one who led the rescue operation at that stage. Welcome to the show, General Chait.
Thank you very much. Very kind of you to have called me.
If you're okay, let me ask you the first question. In 2013, as the Army Commander Central Command, you spearheaded Operation Ganga Prahar and Operation Surya Hope, the Indian Army's response to the 2013 North India floods. 2013 floods and landslides in Uttarakhand were considered by many as the worst natural disaster in that area in 100 years. Could you give us an overview defining the enormity of the situation then that you had faced?
First, let me take a minute on saying as to what exactly Surya Hope implied. Surya Hope, because the name you took of the operation, it implied the hope of the Surya Command, which is the central command, in response to the disaster that was being faced by the people of Uttarakhand. Actually, the HADR operations are the commitment of soldiers towards the safety of their countrymen. And hence, it is the first and the most important task that any soldier can ever be called upon to undertake. That is, with regards to safety of his own countrymen. Now, talking about how did 2013 differ, enormity, and what is happening today. Firstly, no two disasters are the same, and but Surya Hope was the probably it was too extensive. When you talk about Surya Hope 2013 Uttarakhand, you're talking about 40,000 square kilometers of an area which was affected by the flash floods, which was affected by the sharing away of Chorabari Glacier, and it impacted all the four river catchment areas that lie within Uttarakhand, whether it is Kali onto your extreme right, or it is Yamuna onto the extreme left, with Mandakini and Bhagirathi, which is Ganges. So to that extent, it was very, very extensive. It actually dealt with about evacuation of 100,000 people. It dealt with nearly 70,000 people who were local, who were stuck in that area depending upon the disaster and the nature of the disaster that was affected. You are talking about 220 bridges being washed away, and movement absolutely, that is the physical movement or the land movement, very badly affected. A continued impact of the weather all throughout the rescue operations, and also it dealt with death of nearly 600 people and about 4,000 odd men and women who went missing and hence presumably death. So therefore, when you talk about Uttarakhand disaster, generally in the similar area, We are talking about a very, very extensive disaster, and a disaster which took place at a mean altitude of approximately 9,000 feet in adverse weather conditions spanning nearly 14 days. So it was much more extensive than what we have today. But like I said, no disasters are comparable. It is going to be incorrect to say one is big, one is small. It is all the needs of your countrymen, and countrymen come first to every soldier.
Well, let's get on with your plans now. How did you really handle the situation? You were the GOCNC Central Command at that time. There was not enough warning for you, leave alone any estimates when you were stepped into it. You had to plan on scant information, I would say. What were the broad plans evolved for the interventions?
Right. So I think this is actually the key question, and it is the most, should I say, the key to what happened at that point in time. I still remember it was about 16th of June, and we were getting some information of continuous rain and flash floods. The disaster still had not come up to the notice of the administration. So therefore, we had troops deployed along all the four axes that I talked of, the catchment areas. So the local commander and we all decided that it is time that we move the troops in various areas. So we gridded the complete this 40,000 square kilometers astride each axis, and we started to position people inside the gridded areas, let's say a kilometer by kilometer or 2 kilometer by 2 kilometer, astride all these four axes, which were going up to the glaciers. And he started to position our advance people so that they could collect the information. And based on the mosaic which started to develop, and it took some time because we knew that the vehicles will not be able to go. So it took us about nearly whole night, I would call it, for people to be inserted in those graded positions. And after these people were in and they were self-contained, hence lugging everything on themselves, not knowing what is to follow, by early morning, we can say some kind of an advanced grid had been created. It was somewhere around 16th or 17th, I don't remember the date, wherein I realized that the enormity of what is not being reported is far too grave, and we started to move in the troops, organized bodies, small bodies, organized bodies inside the grid which had been created of the EW or the early warning. Now, at that point in time, there was no requisition, there was nothing. And when I managed to compile the information, and that is the time I still remember my chief, General Bikram Singh, was in Pune with the Raksha Mantri. And I spoke to him and I said, there is no demand, there is no requisition. I think we need to move in and I'm deploying troops. He said, absolutely, go ahead. He just informed the Raksha Mantri, and troops deployed without even a requisition on that particular day. And thereafter, it be built up. So the sequence was that you created your own early warning information. And once you started to build this information, you started to develop the mosaic, started to understand the need and the priority and what kind of things are happening instead of being dependent on what media and others were trying to put across to you.
So, what are the kind of resources and was the quantum of resources that you deployed really for combating this particular thing? And I'm also talking about resources other than the military, which were utilized for, let's say, the disaster management.
Uh, when we talk about resources, I know about the army itself. We nearly deployed. Army itself was approximately, if I recollect, about 8,500 troops by the end of it. There were a number of helicopters, which were the Air Force deployed, uh, any number of helicopters, fixed wing aircrafts. Uh, the important part is nearly 1,000 sorties were flown. About 880 tons of materials were transported. There were Navy deployed two naval diving teams. You had the medical corps the psychologist moving in. So all kind of medical assistance, engineering assistance, BRO. You talk about the Air Force, a very significant contribution by the Air Force, and everybody was there. Now the issue was that you had people, but they didn't have power. We are talking about 2013, when the system of power, the Disaster Management Act, had not evolved in a manner as it is now. Today, it is far more empowering than what was there in 2013. So the local authorities had to be marshaled. And local authorities came forward with all their constraints that they have, the numbers that they have, and they provided us the empowerment to bring the aid to them. We were actually the soldiers. Uh, I still remember some news articles called soldiers as soldiers of God. My God, soldiers of God, to be conferred a title for a soldier is itself the biggest, should I say, the best thing that can ever happen, that you become his messengers, you become his foot soldiers, you bring in, you save people. uh, and it was all happening because the number of people, the areas versus the troops, was far too much, and people were moving around and showing themselves and rendering assistance in terms of providing them food, medical, evacuating people, taking them to safe areas, and subsequently evacuating them through various means that were available. So I think Soldiers of God was a big thing, and that was something which nurtured and motivated the complete command then, and it continues to motivate our soldiers whenever they are rendering any assistance to the countrymen that of our nation.
I recall, Janil, that you also walked along with one particular group uh, during the entire disaster management that you were undertaking at that time. Uh, would you like to recall that? What made you walk with this group rather than?
Yeah, I do remember. This was around 26th of June, and we knew that there was a second cycle of bad weather which was to come. And the second cycle of the bad weather, as forecasted by the Met Department, was to start in next 2 to 3 days. Now, when you're dealing with 40,000 square kilometers and you're dealing with areas which are inaccessible with the help of the road, after all, how many machines the helicopters would be able to lift people out? There is only a limited capacity. I remember there was something like 50 helicopters civil, and the Air Force and the Army aviation. So the number was sizable, but even let's assume that the number was 70 or 80 helicopters, which could go land, pick up the people, and bring them back. The capacities on those altitudes being limited, you could only ferry what, 5 or 6 people, and even if you breached all regulations with regards to weight carriage, you probably will carry 8 or 9 or 10. How many sorties would you make? So therefore, there was, and if the second cycle, which was expected to follow 2 to 3 days later, if it had stuck, none of these machines would have flown. So there was no choice but to do something which was different. Now, people in their 12th or 13th day were absolutely fatigued, working day and night. People not wanting to move. It's not only the soldier. You still can guide, motivate a soldier. What you do with, uh, I'll give you a small example which probably will amplify, but I probably can come up a little later on that. And it's an important to understand the human dimension of the disaster. But coming to answer your question, so therefore there was something which was needed to be done, and I said, let me try do on one axis so that I can bring everybody out of it. Now that travel from Badrinath to Joshimath was a long trek. So I decided all the people were already there. We started to marshal everybody, and the aim was when this man of 60 years can do at his age, why is it that you can't do? So whether it was a lady and it was a child, so we managed to get everybody along. And finally, one axis got cleared. And then concurrently, something similar was happening on all the axes. But I talked about the human dimension of a tragedy and why it is so important for leadership in the military at tactical and subunit, not even subunit, at the junior most level. I still remember 17th or 18th of June, I saw some people while flying over an area. This was in the area of Jungle Chatti, and there was about 4:30, 4:40. So I saw some people where I thought people were dead. Actually, they were alive. So I told the helicopter pilot to land me. When the pilot landed me, firstly, there was no helipad. So there was some issue, but finally he did manage to put me down. So there was one buddy of mine and me. We both walked up to this place. The people I thought, and I'm going to be brief because the time is less, the people whom I thought were alive were actually dead. And there was only one male surviving out of that lot. And I happened to, I gave him some biscuits or something like that. We told him that we need to move. He did not respond. After about 2 minutes, the weather was packing up. 5 o'clock was last time the flight, and the senior most commander had got into a tactical operation at the junior most level to save some people. So I was getting a little edgy that, and I didn't have the flexibility or the liberty to spend more time there. So I said, no, आपको चलना पड़ेगा, आपको मैं लेके, please come along. He still didn't respond. He didn't know who the hell am I. So when third time, when I pressured him, and in terms of pressuring him, I said, listen, आपको चलना पड़ेगा, नहीं तो मैं आपको उठा के लेके जाऊंगा. You know what that man told me?
What?
He says, आप जानते हैं ये कौन है? So I said, no. He said, ये मेरे उत्पत्ति हैं, my children. And this couple is, which is lying here, is my parents. And here is the God that I came to meet. Where do you want to take me? I never understood the meaning of life as I understood personally in that fraction of a moment when he says the utility of life. These are my children, these are my parents, this is the God that I came to meet, and I have stuck with a disaster, and you want to lift me out of it? This is the human dimension of a disaster, which each soldier has to go through when he's dealing with people's frustrations and emotions. He doesn't want to be lifted out. He's frustrated. He just wants to get out of it. And therefore, coming back to that story of 26th of June, it was important that I cleared up. I didn't want to get stuck into a second cycle of bad weather. I'm sorry, I gave a long answer.
It's all right. I mean, I think that was very beautifully explained by you. I'm sure our viewers would have really got affected by the kind of experience that you have shared with us. But let's take it a little more forward, and we'll talk about what do you think were the difficulties that you experienced over there. Are there any lessons learned from there? What is it?
I think the one of the important things that I feel in a disaster, and I at least meant, disasters are actually effect-based operations. The effects have to be understood. And if a commander continues to show his presence and does not change his personality, like for example, today I'm talking to a set of people, and tomorrow or day after I'm not there, and somebody else manages to go there. People who are already short of hope start to disbelieve the story that is being communicated to them. They start to lose faith whether they will be evacuated or not evacuated if you are constrained with regards to the evacuation means in such a disaster. And also there is all kind of things which go on, which were happening without even a knowledge. There were some people, some reports that some foreigners have been taken out, something else has happened. So all kind of things happen. It's most important that soldiers, whosoever they may be, whether it is ITBP, whether it is NDRF, whatever be the case, all soldiers who are fighting this disaster are truthful to their countrymen.
Okay, we have today a major problem now again in Uttarakhand, and they're going ahead with the rescue work. If you can, if I'm sure you've been keeping yourself abreast with it, how did it come to this really? If you can just explain the situation.
I mentioned to you there are four catchment areas, and this is one of the catchment areas, which is the near Tapovan, Reni village. One of the glaciers has broken off, and the glaciers breaking off is a function is all happening because of global warming, the receding of the glaciers, uh, happening during the month of February is strange, but the glacier has broken off, which resulted in the rise of water. And when the water starts to rise, it and flows along the natural gradient. So all the muck and mud and stones and boulders all are carried and displaced. When they're displacing, somewhere they're forming more lakes as it is happening today as we gather today. Um, and in some areas, they wash away people, properties, whatever else it is. So there is the from whatever I'm gathering from the television channels, I believe that there is another lake in the offering being formed, though much smaller. But the biggest challenge there is the tunnel, where some people, some 32 people, are stuck there. Uh, Now the issue, we come back to this human dimension of a disaster. 33 people are stuck there. You can't walk away from it, knowing it. And we have to make an effort till the time you come to a conclusion. It's a hopeless situation, or you rescue them. So finding the last survivor is a big issue. It will continue to be. As I gather, there is still about 150, 160 meters of area to be cleared in that tunnel. Other than that, the area seems to have is recovering fast. There are about 190, 200 people who are still missing. And if this lot is 32, which is in the area of the tunnel, then we are talking about 150, 160 people rendering of the HADR assistance. And those 170, 150, whatever be the number, they need to be found. And only then we would be able to say that we have managed to rise up to the challenge and meet the aspirations of our country.
Janil, my question is, you had this huge experience of 2013 behind you, and there's a situation which is being handled today in Uttarakhand that you just described. Uh, how do you feel? Is it being handled quite efficiently? Have we improved our strengths in terms of addressing such situations? Or what else do we have to do to really, let's say, be better prepared for handling such situations?
I think the situation is being handled extremely well. And like I said, each situation is different. There is no one fixed solution that can be applied. Each one is peculiar. Each one is peculiar in its own way. Uh, the systems, actually, right from 2013, have evolved both procedurally, organizationally, as well as training wise of the people who are required to do. But we still have a vast area. The number of troops who are specialized in this are not available right at the word go. They will always be built up, sidestepped from various places. But I think the complete effort of the government, present government, with regards to disaster relief, is a very is most positive, and they have institutionalized large amount of things which were not the case in our earlier times when the adaptability was the key and we had to adapt on the ground. I mentioned to you with regards to empowerment, with regards to understanding sensitivity of the district administration, because they are going to be the front. They are going to be in the front, whatever be the forces which are coming from outside. And they have to be fully aware as to how to deal with it, how to position, how to assist the soldiers. When I say soldiers, again, I'm talking about everybody who's responding or the first responders to deal with the crisis. And I think it is, I would say, it is being done most efficiently as I see on the television.
Now, in the long run, as we look into the future, let's say, It's maintaining ecological balance, it's maintaining environmental, keeping in view environmental issues that we have to somehow match our developmental efforts with. How far do you think that is required in such areas, where the young mountains like the Himalayas, especially Uttarakhand, now being in focus?
I think the let me say the institution that I came from, the institution that the military has contributed immensely. You have large amount of TA battalions. This kind of a work which the TA battalions do to stabilize the soil is immense. Even the cantonment areas next to the cantonments, whether it is whatever be the military or the civil areas, are all looking at this whole effort towards greenery. The aspect which is with regards to pollution, with regards to, I'm saying all the direct as well as indirect efforts which are being mounted to stabilize and to ensure that disasters do not happen are getting the due importance. We need to realize that we have not really matured mountains in certain areas, and disasters are not really only in mountains. There are all kinds of disasters that are happening. Look at the capability building that is happening. Capability building by coalition of willing, building it up with large number of militaries. Look at what is being done by the Navy. When you build up, no independent individually, no nation can fight a disaster. So nations come together, forgetting the boundaries, forgetting the sovereignty issue, to come together to build capacity. And by building capacities and technological capabilities to deal with disasters in far-flung areas, I think the effort is there. The government is equally conscious of it. It is sensitizing people, but we as Indians need to be a little more, should I say, responsible. We should feel that climate is something which is going to be here, and we need to give to our next generation a better climatic scenario situation than what we have inherited. So, therefore, our sensitivity towards dealing with all this is going to contribute most efficiently for our next generation, which is going to come forward.
All right. Thank you, Jill. Thank you so much for being with BharatShakti.in. And thank you, viewers. Thank you for logging in. And do log in time and again onto our uh, platform, and you'll find such interesting interviews. Thank you, General.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.